How's everybody doing today?
They're doing good. Got Electric Whittler,
All right.
Billy Shoemate,
Hey, Billy.
Tony from the UK.
Right on.
Um,
So today's our giveaway toward the end of the live stream. We got a really cool giveaway for our members, and we actually have a bonus carving. We're giving the carving away that I showed off last week, and we're gonna show you real quick here just in a second. But Casey threw a piece of artwork into the mix, so she's going to be giving away one of her small Dremel carved mooses, and it's pretty cool. So that's our 10,000 subscriber. I guess we're going to have a celebration kind of a thing, and somebody's going to be getting some cool carvings.
got Lori Keller.
Hey, Keller.
Tony asked how long it's going to take you to carve the bear.
Not too much longer, and we'll have it roughed out. And so some of the more time-consuming stuff is when I go back later and I start shaving and refining. A real quick blocking goes quick. We're not going to talk a lot. We're going to get back to making some noise. But real quick, check out the honey pot there. We started that on a live stream here a little bit ago. And these are the two carvings we're giving away. And you still have time to become a member of the channel if you want to. It's $3.99 a month to be a member. And, so we're giving that away at the end of the live stream. And Casey's little moose here is adorable. And so those carvings we're going to give them away at the end. Beaver mode.
We're over 1,000 views, so.
Cool. that piece is pretty well roughed out. We're going to start a beaver now. So I'm just going to go ahead and peel the bark off. Get the bark off the log. The bark a lot of times has a lot of grit in it, and it dulls the chain really quickly. So anytime you can get the bark off your chainsaw carving log is a good day. We're also doing, one of our members, channel members, is going to be getting a carving at the end of the live stream today, so stick around and check that out. We're going to be throwing knives at a stump, and whoever's name we hit is going to get a free carving. So you can still become a member. It's $3.99 a month. And, honestly, I'm not sure how you do that, but I know you could do it before the end of the live stream, so you'll be eligible.
Yep, you can do it in the chat, and if you go to our page, you can do it from there too. Just call out a few people. Plywood.
Plywood. There's an awesome member of the channel.
Night Owl.
Aiden.
Matthew. I think I said Electric already.
Yeah.
I think I said Keller.
Electric is good people.
Yeah.
It's good people right there. Most of the tribe is good people.
Did I say Keller?
You said Keller.
Okay. Dad.
Hey, Dad.
I think Ryan Stone Suzanne said she had to go, but she was in there.
Oh man, did you guys see her hand?
Oh my gosh.
Holy cow. Looks like she really smashed that thing. Separated her bone and her finger right off. All of her knuckles are bent out of joint. That's a rough deal right there.
Got Tyrell, Stefano, Monty. Linda. I would hurry up and start.
What's that?
I said I would hurry up and start. Bear and the Boss Lady.
Hey, Bear. What's up, buddy?
John Murray. Palado's in there, and LJ Woodworks.
Two awesome channels right there to check out. Palado, post your channel, and LJ as well. He's a lathe turner. That guy does some really cool live streams. Everybody should check him out and subscribe.
Paula, Raymond, Darcy. Got Tracy McCormick here.
Hey, Tracy.
Got West Country Mudlarks. Kevin Durica.
Hey, Kevin.
I think I said Pilata last time.
Yep.
Okay.
How are we doing on likes?
674.
Oh my gosh. Thank you guys so much. That's amazing.
I'm not going to tell you how many views or how many subscribers we've gained. I'm going to make you wait until the end. But just
Sounds like a
know
good
it's
thing.
really good.
Hey guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you being here with us and watching us carve and stuff. We love this.
James Dunn says you're very talented.
Thank you, James. I always point the glory up to the Creator, though.
Andrew Grant watching from Jamaica.
Wow, I bet it's hot there. All right.
Garden is here, and actually they are a channel member, and I don't know if they've been in to hear about the giveaway, so I don't know if you want to talk about that.
We're giving away a couple of carvings at the end of the live stream to one of our lucky channel members. It should be really cool. I mean, the giveaway itself should be pretty awesome. We're going to be throwing knives and axes hit a stump with everybody's name on it on a piece of paper. And whoever's name we hit, we're going to give a carving away, and we'll show you the two carvings. At first it was just going to be one of my hand carvings, but Casey, my wife, the camera lady, she carves as well, and she Dremel carved a little moose. She decided she wanted to give her little moose. The thing's adorable, so we're gonna be giving that away at the end, as well as my face carving. So there's going to be two carvings, and I think we have 25 members is how many is up there right now. So two carvings and 25 members, those are pretty good odds. And And it should be a real fair way to do it. I'm going to stand way back and throw knives and axes at pieces of paper and watch them bounce off until one finally sticks. Yeah. I want to get this thing up on the stump soon. It's a lot of bending over.
I'm making him weight bear. I'm not going to tell him how many we've gotten
Cool.
until the very end. But it actually, I think it's a little bit less than what you think it is. I'm not going to say what it is.
So there's still time to become a member. If you join right now, we'll throw your name on the board to throw the knives and the axes at. But this is the hand carving I did. I'm going to be giving away. It's got my signature on the back. And this is Casey's adorable little moose. She Dremel carved this thing. And Casey has got such a giving heart. She wants to give everything away. And quite honestly, her heart's rubbed off on me. I never gave nearly as much as I do since I've met her. And that's her initials there. And so yeah, we're giving this stuff at the end. And but we're gonna finish carving this beaver first, and I gotta.
Oh yeah, it's a beaver. A bear is a really good guess because we carve a lot of bears, but this one's gonna be a beaver.
Yeah, you can see I'm starting to cut in the tail right here. See the flat kind of a spot. That's what you guys, if you want to watch for that to get cut in, that's going to be the big beaver tail there. And Bear's a professional carver, so of course he knew what it was. All right, more noise.
Sounds good.
Let me see if I can get that up on the stump.
Be careful.
I'm cricking my back, bending over.
Yeah. Jane here.
Who is it?
Jane.
Hey Jane, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Right now it's 4:30, so.
Oh, cool. Well, do about 10 more minutes and we'll start throwing knives and axes and stuff. What do you think?
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good. $800 likes.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate everybody that hit the like button. It's awesome. A little Gatorade.
Take mine too, actually.
What's that?
So they'll take mine too, actually.
Is
Do
that
you mind
yours?
opening it for me?
Sure.
I'm one-handed.
Yeah.
You can show people the carvings while you're here too.
Yeah, check out, did you show them the honey pot bear? We started this one on a live stream a little while ago. I can't remember exactly when. And in about 10 minutes, we're going to be giving these two carvings away. This moose was carved by my wife, who happens to be the camera lady. And she Dremel carved this adorable little moose. See her initials there. And this is one of my hand carvings here. And so we've got all of our members' names on a piece of paper, and we're gonna tack them to a stump and throw knives and axes until we hit a piece of paper, and that's who's gonna get the carvings. So
Thanks, John. And you can still become a member. It's still time. It's $3.99 a month. You can do it right from the chat, or you can do it from our YouTube page. Electric says the hat is awesome.
check out The Electric Whittler. Awesome Dremel carver. It's got a really cool YouTube channel. And also Bear and the Boss Lady, I know, have been in there. Bear does live streams. So he's carving some pretty fancy looking stuff. And check out Bear and the Boss Lady. So you'll get me about
8 more minutes.
8 more minutes.
time.
All right. Thank goodness for that.
Yep. Let me hold this for a moment.
Sure. Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's go over and we're gonna. So, this is everybody's names. Guys, take a look. Make sure, tell me if you can see that. And Casey's gonna fold all these up. Pretty sure we got all the members there. Yep. Go over to this side again. So she's gonna fold all of these names up. This big hump right here. And then I'm gonna grab these tools of wonderment, and I'm gonna chuck them at the stump until we hit somebody's name, and they're gonna win a carving. So that's the plan. And we're gonna go over here, so I can't see Casey. I can't see where she puts the names and stuff. That way it's fair. I don't know who's who. She's gonna fold the papers up so I can't see the stuff. Can't see the names. And I was gonna show you guys the carvings again, but I guess she might have took them over there already. But anyways, there she is. This could be just take her a minute to get everybody's name tacked up there. Bear says, woo! All right. Give you guys something to look at. Mom says, good luck, everyone. There's our honey pot bear. Fantastic way to pick a winner. I was inspired by you, Electric. Electric Whittler did a giveaway. He's a very giving person. And he gave away some prizes. But he basically dropped some chisels from an elevated position onto white pieces of paper until they stuck in, and that's how he chose his winners. So that inspired me to throw knives. But yeah, plywood's in there. I think plywood's in there twice, actually. He has 2 memberships. And yep, check out Bigfoot. Here, I'm gonna rub Bigfoot's head, so for good luck for everybody. Hey Matthew. Hey Nikki. I didn't see Nikki, but welcome. Glad you're in there. We're getting ready to throw knives and axes at some pieces of paper on a stump, and we're giving away some carvings. So give him a kiss. No way. I'm not that weird, Electric. You know, you might make me dance or do some weird stuff and make a fool of myself, but that's going too far, buddy. Not a chance. Nikki Blair, how are you? Thanks for being here. It's taken her a minute to get all those names tacked up over there. Looks like Matthew throws tomahawks. I tried throwing axes years ago just for the fun of it, and I'm going to tell you, it's harder than you think. All I really did was bounce them off the stump more than I actually hit anything. So this could be interesting. I'm definitely not very good at this. Do it for the likes, yeah. All right, Electric. I'm gonna carve a little Bigfoot and send it to you, and you can smooch him up. How's that? These are the carvings here. Yeah, I've mentioned something like that about Bear. last time in Bigfoot, and he was ready to beat Bigfoot up, man. This is cottonwood bark. Baron, the boss lady, actually sent or gave me this bark. He didn't send it. He gave it to me in person. But I love carving the cottonwood bark. And I think those of you that have ever tried it probably feel the same. Yeah, likes the moose. That's crazy. Casey actually, she loves this moose so much. And I tried to encourage her to sell it. She's a very giving person. And so I had her put like an outrageous price on it just for sale in the showroom, and she almost sold it. She was so sad that she almost sold it, so she decided she really wanted to give it away on the giveaway. And yeah, it's making progress over there. This is a custom ordered piece, Waving Bear. And this bear is actually going to get pearls. It's going to have some pearls. And this is also a 4-foot custom bear. And we take you in the showroom here. We got kind of a full wood shop and stuff. Show you guys around a little bit. This is, yeah, Bear, thanks to Bear, a lot of people get to carve cottonwood bark. That guy is very generous in sending out his bark. So this is Scott Battis's bear. He's coming on, making a trip up a week from today. He's going to be getting his bear. So I know he watches our live streams a lot. He doesn't always chime into the chat, but really good dude. Scott's solid. And he's also a member of our channel, so his name's out there on the stump. But these are Casey's little mushkas here. Mushka. So these are chainsaw carvings. And yeah, she's got the heart. But yeah. Electric claims the table. Yeah, I'm going to leave that up to you and Scott Battis. He might give you a really good deal on it. Aiden, so good to see you in there, buddy. Check out Night Owl's channel. And I guess Aiden put a deep gash on one of his fingers. Between him and Rhinestone Suzanne, there seems to be some injuries in the tribe, so everybody be extra careful. Casey does awesome carvings, Matthew, and she's a legitimate carver. And it's funny, sometimes when we meet new people and they say, what do I do for a living? And I tell them, and they say, what does she do for a living? And we tell them, and they're like, oh, she's a chainsaw carver. It's kind of funny, but Casey is a very legitimate chainsaw carver. She sells a lot of carvings here. So she's got to be getting close out there. And I've shown off a lot of what we have, I guess. We did this kind of the small version, heads up, butts up bear of what we did today. And what else? Get this guy here. So the hillbilly. Mom wants to see the hillbilly. That's totally me. I'm a hillbilly. I have to put a moose on the list of things. You really should, John. It's a fun project.
I think you gotta move that big log.
Oh, really? We can work around that. So, you want to take the phone?
Yeah, I have your knives and an axe here. Ooh.
You stabbed me. Let me show you guys the carvings one more time.
Ta-da!
Yeah. And now I get to make a fool out of myself. And let's see what happens. These
You
are,
got this.
Don't be afraid. These are cheap Walmart knives. These things are like $5. So it's got to stick to the paper. And this, I don't know, maybe this is, I don't know if we can, this might take a while.
Matthew says to blindfold you.
The what?
Blindfold you.
Oh, no,
They're folded up so we can't see the names.
yeah, this is a bad
Have you
idea.
retrieve them?
Huh?
You got it. You got
If
this.
we can't stick one of them, then we might have to try something different. This is a really bad idea.
You got this. It's stuck, but not to a paper. You can do it.
Try a little closer.
Did it hit a paper?
What's that?
Did it hit a paper?
I don't know. You guys just want to go to whoever's the closest, or do you actually want to see it stick in?
I think it's touching that paper.
It's touching it.
It's up to you.
Do they think that's fair? It's touching it.
What do you guys think? Should he actually have to like stick it in to the paper? Or does it count if it touches it? I'm just waiting. Bear says touching. Touching counts.
All right, so we got the first one. Wow, Scott Battis.
Scott Battis.
All right. That's going to be a happy surprise, Scott. I don't know if he's watching or not.
You can do it.
Crazy way to do it. I don't know if we'll do this again.
My idea was to put all the names in a bowl and then
Just
draw
wanted
them
it to
out.
be fair.
No,
It's
I
like,
know.
you know, people do weird stuff. Like they could put a little paper in that thing and reach in and pretend like they got it out. I just want it to be obvious that it really is legitimate.
Electric Whittler said, I told you to kiss Bigfoot for good luck. No one ever listens to me.
Okay, I lost the knife. I don't know where that went.
I can find the knife. I know one fell over here somewhere. I see one of them.
I see a little part here. I don't know if that's a knife part.
Uh-oh. Here's one.
Cool. Yeah, that's a knife part.
We're down a knife.
Nope. Sound effects don't work.
Oh, it touched one.
It stuck a hole in it. I think we're going to count it.
Who is it?
See the hole? The Shoop's Wood Shop.
Oh, buddy. Woo!
So Scott Battis got a face carving, and the Shoop's Wood Shop got Casey's Muska. And you know what? We're going to try one more just for a backup name. I'm pretty sure, I know Scott's going to get his for sure. He's coming to get his table soon. But the Shoop's Wood Shop, I'm not real familiar with them. I do know that they've been hanging out in the tribe a little bit in the community. And he does have a YouTube channel, so I'm going to assume that we're going to be able to get a hold of him. But we'll do a backup just in case.
I tried this the other day, guys. It's really hard.
I gotta take some lessons before I do. I'm gonna try further back here. So this is the backup now. Ooh,
Perry the Carbon
Perry,
Wizard.
he's an awesome member of the channel, awesome member of the community. So Perry, you're the backup. I don't think it's going to go to this, but if it does, you're on standby. And yeah, Sheep's Wood Shop and Scott Battis. We're just going to read the scripture. We read a scripture at the end of all of our live streams. And I've already noticed that Casey picks them out, and she wrote like half the Bible on there. So be ready for a little reading here. It says, "He has made peace with everything in heaven and on earth by means of Christ's blood on the cross. This includes you who were once far away from God. You were separated from him by your own evil thoughts and actions. Yet he has reconciled you to himself through Christ's death in his physical body. And that has brought you into his own presence, holy and blameless. You stand before him without a single fault. But you must continue believing this truth and stand firmly in it. Do not drift away from the assurance you received when you heard the good news." Colossians 1:20 through 23. And with that, we'll be here next Wednesday at 2 o'clock live streaming again. And in the meantime, check out Bear and the Boss Lady's live stream. And we're going to leave you guys with that. We'll see you next time.